What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Pebble Beach 2025 breakdown. Much later than I wanted to go tonight. Scheduling this week did not work out with the kids getting in the bed. That'll happen, I guess, from time to time. So glad that we've got the Thursday start back this week. After last week's Wednesday, so this will give you a little time to rewatch this. I'd say most everybody's watching this on Wednesday. So wanted to go through, just like we have been, touch on the course, touch on some build thoughts. I think there's a lot of interesting ways to go this week, but just high level before we get into that, you've got Pebble Beach, a little different than in years past. Last year started the signature event being at Pebble, which got rid of Monterey Peninsula course. So it's no longer a 3-course rotation, just 2. No Cut, Spyglass, and Pebble are the 2 courses. They'll rotate those 2 on Thursday, Friday, much like last week, other than there's no cut. So definitely some angles that we'll want to watch through tomorrow in terms of the weather, because I think that I would rather be playing, if the wind were to kick up one day, I think it's pretty clear that I would rather be playing Spyglass on that day as opposed to Pebble. But as of right now, and we'll look at this, I don't really see any wind at all over the first 2 days at least. So I don't think that I'll be doing many course stacks in terms of the full week situation here. I'm going to try to pull up, just kind of while we're talking and talking about the courses, to see how last year played in terms of Spyglass versus Pebble. From just brief off the top of my head, the way that I remember it is Spyglass is quite a bit tougher, or not quite a bit, but a little bit tougher than Pebble over time, in the way that it plays. And again, I think, though, that depends on the wind and the weather here this week. So definitely something that we want to keep our eye on. Spyglass for that one course is going to be a little bit more of a driver-heavy course, although last year was a little bit of an anomaly in that it being the first week first year of the no-cut format with much stronger field than we are used to seeing come to Pebble for the Pro-Am. The weather was wild. If you guys remember, that was the Saturday cut short week where they only played 3 rounds and Wyndham Clark won. But while they were playing the course, it was kind of a situation where it was so wet, it was kind of target practice. And I think that led to a lot more drivers being hit off the tee at Pebble than maybe you were used to seeing. People were being a lot more aggressive. They knew they had to be. Spyglass is going to be a little more driver heavy traditionally. A lot of times we think of Pebble as one of those plotter type golf courses where you just need to be in position off the tee and able to then attack into these small, very small greens, some of the smallest on the tour, or maybe the smallest on the tour. So definitely something that we're going to have to look at is approach play, wedge play, positional type golf off the tee, I think. But, like I was saying, last year I think allowed much more driver off the tee, with some of these guys just being more aggressive and knowing there wasn't going to be as much run out. So I think if we can get as we get these stronger fields here, I think it's gonna lend itself a lot more to that type of golf, being a little more aggressive. But I do think it's going to be a little bit tougher to just go full bore this week, even though there isn't going to be much wind. So I think there will be some pretty low scores, but I don't think it'll quite be like last year. As we look, I'm about back to it, looking to try to see the splits from last year between Spyglass and Pebble. Let's see here. So we had, so round one, or over the first 2 days last year, Pebble was played at 2.6 under par. Spyglass played 1.1 under par. So, definitely on Showdown, something we're going to be wanting to look at, about a stroke and a half over the first 2 days last year between Pebble versus Spyglass. And like I said, as I don't see much weather, I think it should play about that same way. I think Pebble will be a little bit easier. So Showdown, we're going to want to target the first 2 days, guys, on Pebble with how the weather looks right now. So going back to the field, much stronger, much smaller, no cut event over the 4 days. We're getting a lot more of this as the signature event format has been introduced. And I mean, as always, I think it kind of lends itself to being a little more aggressive in your lineup construction, where you have guys down low, and we'll get to them in the 6K range that I'm comfortable clicking this week. So what does that mean? We'll kind of play around with some builds about jamming some of these top guys. The only pricing that we have above 10K is 3 guys, Rory, Scotty, and Morikawa. Scotty's 11-9, first event of the year, coming off the cut and the surgery there. He was sixth here last year. A lot of these guys, especially at the top of the board, don't play here very often. So when they were forced to come last year, it's kind of a new course for a lot of them, other than maybe the U.S. Open back the year that Woodland won. But we'll kind of see how easy it is to get to a Scotty. We're going to play around with some of those builds here. But I think there's definitely some 6K golfers that, we've been playing in recent weeks that I don't think are in that bad of form or that bad of clicks. And just to jump right down into that, you got Lee Hodges, who we've been playing, quite a bit. Not great history here, but he's in really, really good form, and 6,200 is quite absurd. For him, I'll be interested to see his ownership, but I don't think it'll get drastically high. So him, Ben Griffin is another guy that is in pretty solid form overall. 6,600, not great form here, but I mean, we've been playing this guy up in the 8s, and now he's 66 with a stronger field here. I don't know that. I just don't think that any of these guys' ownership really gets above 10%. So in that case, I'm okay spreading around some exposure here. But you have guys like Aaron Rye, Denny McCarthy. Both of those look really good to me. Rye is like the prototypical plotter guy who is going to put himself in position and attack these greens. Denny McCarthy, great putter, really good history here for Denny. If you look back, 26 last year, 4th and 12th the 2 years before that. Pretty solid form. And he rates out, I just updated the odds before I came in here to Pinnacle's odds, and he rates out number 2 in the DK value column, which is just comparing where he's at in odds, which on Pinnacle's 83 to 1 versus his DraftKings price at 7,000. In terms of where that ranks, it's about a 15 spot difference. He's ranked 30th in odds, 45th in pricing. That's pretty drastic difference. His ownership, I mean, I've seen a lot of talk about Denny to start the week. Does he get into that 10 to 15 range? Maybe. But let's just kind of start playing. I want to see a Scotty build because I'm inclined initially to skip over him this week just with all the uncertainty. And if it does end up being a situation where he's easy to get to, that may push his ownership up. But if you think about where he's been owned some over 2024, pushing 40% or so a lot of weeks, he's probably only going to be in the 20s. So it might be a good spot to take, embrace the uncertainty and go with him. But as of now, I kind of lean towards not playing. So let's go over to the builder tab and just start to play around with it, because if you plug in Lee Hodges and Scotty, that gets you all the way back up to 7,900 on average. So then you can pretty much play another one of those 9 to 10K golfers. You got Morikawa, you got JT, you got Patrick Cantlay. I think all those are really solid plays. Be careful with how you're playing some of these together, because if it does end up being a situation where Scotty's easy to get up to at 11.9, and we've seen him much higher priced as well, then I think you're going to see some popular combinations between like a Scotty JT lineup. So just to kind of plug that in there and see what that gives us. Now we've got 7,300. It dropped us back down into here, but I mean, that's easy to overcome. You got Denny McCarthy. So really what we're doing here is maybe building a pretty chalky lineup to kind of see where the field's going to go, because I think this could be a really popular start depending on if people are comfortable going down to Lee Hodges. But that leaves you 7,550 left for 2 spots. You got this clump of guys at 7,200, 7,300. You got Hoagie, who's been really good here, won here a couple years ago. Harry Hall, good form. Really, just again, a guy that we're used to playing in weaker fields at the 9K range. Now he's 7,300. Nick Taylor coming off a win a couple weeks ago, backed that up with the 12th. He's a winner here back in 2020. I think he fits. So you plug one of those guys in. Let's just throw Hoagie. In terms of ownership down there, looks like Hoagie's going to be the most owned. But again, we're kind of building the chalky team right now. That leaves us 7,800, which gets us right to like Adam Scott, Tom Kim, Bobby Mack, Bo Hostler, Grazerman. Really, I think that's going to be a build that I don't want to kind of land in all those spots, because I think what you're going to get into in tournaments anyway is something where you're going to have like a 2v2 off of a ton of different combinations. And I would rather try to just get my entire build a little different, my structure a little different, to where I don't have to worry about it being just a 2v2. I'm just inherently, the build is different to where if the build structure fits, or if a certain range kind of busts, well, then I'm just different inherently, and I got an easier path to the top. So that just tells us right there, Scotty's going to be easy to get to. We've got tons of value down below. Rory is a $1,200 discount. He played horrible here last year. I don't hate him this week. His ownership is going to be lower than anybody up here. The driver's kind of muted, like we talked about here. So that hurts Rory, but he can pop anywhere. And, maybe he pops in an unexpected place for a lot of people, and you get him at a lower ownership, lower price than maybe we're used to as well. I think Colin and Cantlay are very strong options. Decky's playing just really good golf to start the year after the win. But I think overall, as of now, Colin is my top option up here. I think he fits his place to a T. Coming off of a really strong, he was so. I mean, he would have won almost any other tournament there's been at the number he was under par at the Century. Just got beat by the Decky historic run there. So if you play two of these guys, let's just start with a Cantlay Morikawa build here. And I think Cantlay, with his history here, will probably get some ownership at the discount down at 9,400. Definitely could see him in the mid-20s, can see Colin in the mid-20s. So we're going to still have to get a little bit different in how we structure the build overall. We have a lot more flexibility in terms of salary that maybe we can just get different or skip a popular range in the 8s and the upper 7s or something. Or maybe we just over jam this top range depending on where we land. Jason Day is a guy who has probably the best course history here. If you look back, I mean, that is wild on the sheet to look at. 4th, 11th, 5th, 2nd, 4th, 7th, 24th, 6th. Playing solid golf. Faltered a little bit at the end last week, but he was right in that tournament at the Farmers at Torrey Pines. So definitely like him at 89. So let's just throw him in there. In terms of ownership with him, I think he's also going to get a little bit of ownership. Just below him, Hovland. Hovland's a tough one. I don't think anybody's going to hardly play him. This is a guy who was low AM here at the U.S. Open. He won a amateur event here, the USAM. He won here that was played at Pebble, and this is one of those things where is the talent going to pop back up for Vic, and I think it will eventually. But he does seem to kind of have a lot that he's working through right now. But hey, maybe this is a place that you take a chance. Didn't look very good at the Century, in his only event on the PGA Tour this year, 36th. A lot of uncertainty with him, but I think with the uncertainty comes low ownership. So you could pivot there. Wyndham Clark won last year. I don't think he's going to be super high owned in that range, but let's go with the day build and see where we can get the structure a little bit different, because we are still fairly popular, but we've only got 7,100 left. So when you come down here and let's just go back to a similar build of Lee Hodges, and now we're back to 7,650. You've probably got a popular group. It looks more to me like the low 8s is going to be a little more popular than the upper 7s. So maybe you embrace, a little bit of low ownership with the guy like Nick Taylor in this build, where we went through the Hoagie, Hall, and Taylor group, and Nick Taylor was one of the lower owned guys of that group. So maybe you dip down and take a shot on him. You got Akshay, who I think is not going to be, he should be under 10%. I think he's a solid fit for this place. You got Jordan Spieth coming off the long layoff and injury. Does he, fit this place? Yes, we know. Good history here. Obviously going to have some rust, I would expect. But, he does come back to a place that he's very, very comfortable. Another guy right there is Shane Lowry, who everybody was all over last week. And now nobody's going to play him after a not so good outing. But the form overseas has been very good. This is not a course that he has a strong record on. But he hasn't played here since 2019. So I think you could take a shot on Lowry. I think that could be an interesting way to get different and still play somebody that I like. A lot of people liked him last week. What's the difference? Just one bad week in his first event in the U.S. If you throw Lowry in there, it leaves you 7,300 that you can land right on that range of Hoagie, Hall, Taylor. You could leave a little bit of salary. I think that would be a way to get different. Play Denny. You leave 300 in salary. In that situation, I think that's a way to play a little more of a popular play in Denny. But you're different with Lowry. I don't think Hodges is going to be drastically owned, and you still have a slightly different structure because you left a little salary on the table there. So I think that's a solid look, a solid build. In terms of guys at the top, how you would really set yourself up differently at the top, I think you could start – if you start with Hideki as one of your top, play a couple guys up there and one of them's Decky, I think that's a way to do it. If you started Decky Fleetwood, that's probably the complete just different flip. But I think an interesting one would be like a Decky Rory team. That would also be pretty similar to that. You're getting two, talented guys that, we normally like quite a bit. Now we got 7,400, and you can pretty much play anybody that you want to. This would be a build I'd be comfortable playing Hoagie and Denny together. Now down low, you got 7,700 still left for a couple spots. You can play Adam Scott, who I like, Bo Hostler, both probably going to be right around that 8 to 12 range, somewhere in there. And if you do that, you're left with 7,800. You could play both of them. You could go down and play like the Aaron Rye with that team at 6,900. And then you've got, let's see, what's that leave you? 85. You're back into the mid-8s. You're just barely off of Clark, but you got Pendrith. You got Mav McNeely, who's local here and solid history. Zalatoris is going to be super low owned. He's playing pretty good to start the year. I'm pretty happy with what I've seen out of him. Does he fit this course? Not very good history here. The putter's not great, but I think if you wanted to take a shot, you could do it. But we're already set up differently up top by going Rory and Decky on this team. Maybe instead of landing in that mid-8s, you get up to a Cantlay on that build. And if you get up to a Cantlay on that build, or really anybody in that 9K range, let's see, what do we need to do? Of course, we're over. You probably got to play Lee Hodges back in that example over Hoagie. And I think that gives you enough. Yeah, you'd have a couple hundred left, and you got three, studs up top, Rory and Decky at lower ownership, Cantlay with a good course history, solid form, and then Rye, McCarthy, Lee Hodges, all decent form for those guys, and solid fits, I believe, as well. So you can kind of see where my head's at in these type of events. We'll just play around with another Scotty build maybe before we get out of here. So I think an interesting combination to really get you different would be to go Scotty, but skip that range that I have all highlighted right there, 94 to 10-2, where you're going to get a lot of consolidated ownership. And then you go down to, like, if you do a start of Scotty Fleetwood day, you got 6,700. You got to probably jam down into that low range. Let's just take out day, because maybe we can't get all the way up there. But again, you could if you were playing Lee Hodges. I just don't want to put Lee Hodges in every single build I'm doing here on the show. But you get back into this bottom range. Let's see here. You got like Ben Griffin, Aaron Rye, who we've talked about. Probably going to need to play two of those guys. So Fleetwood's going to be pretty low on. So I think we could get back to Denny, and we'll go with Rye here. So we got 75-50. We land back in that range. We can play Nick Taylor or Hoagie, and then you get back up into the upper sevens. You could play another one of those lower guys like the Ben Griffin. You play Ben Griffin with that team, you're back at 8,500 in that mid-eights. Yeah, so a lot of interesting things that you can do with Scotty to set yourself up a little bit different at the top of the board. So this is setting up for me to be a week that I really like in terms of multi-entry. And the reason I say that is because I have kind of a clear-cut value group that I like. Lee Hodges, Ben Griffin, Rye, McCarthy, the three down there below 7,500. So I have, 6 guys. Maybe I add another one or two that I can go pretty heavy on. And then I can spread out at the top. I can make some of those builds like with Scotty and just get more spread ownership. And I like to do that because normally if you're playing somebody down below, it's because either a mispricing or they open up a lot for you. And I think that's what we've got here is not necessarily mispricing because of how much stronger the field is, but we've got this group that we're comfortable clicking. And if we're comfortable clicking them, then we can move along and spread the top where who's going to be surprised if any of these guys above, 9K even, or especially the 94 and up group wins. I mean, Scotty, Rory, Morikawa, Oberg, JT, Hideki, Cantlay. I'm not going to be surprised if any of those win. So the only real way you can get exposure to that entire group is if you consolidate down below. A lot of people will do the other way where they will zone in on a few of these guys up top and then they'll spread below because they say there's more variance in the low price guys. Well, that's true, but any of these top guys can play good any week. And I would rather hit on weeks that I hit the value plays, make sure I have exposure to a lot of the groups up here as opposed to trying to hit on the specific guy up top. Because no matter if they're a skill set fit for this place or not, like just for example, the Rory versus Colin discussion, Colin to me is a much better fit for Pebble Beach But am I going to be surprised when Rory, with the talent that he's got, puts it together this week? He can do that on any course. So I would rather, have exposure to both. And that's the way that I would see to do it, is consolidate down below. So that's about all I've got for this week. I will have ranks and cores up tomorrow. I think Chris will have core as well. Hopefully we'll be back together next week. I guess next week's the waste management, right before concluding right before the Super Bowl. So good luck to everybody here at Pebble Beach. We'll have showdown content sheet updated throughout the week as well. Looks like they're going to have shot link data on Spyglass, which is going to be nice for showdown, because the guys that play Spyglass, who we don't target on day one, are going to be the group that we're going to be targeting on day two. So I would like to see how they're hitting, which is going to be nice that we've got that this week. So join us in the Discord. If you've not tried us out, I think we've got a free trial still at the link in the description of the video. And you can choose monthly, weekly, yearly subscriptions for either single sports or all sports. And we've got a ton of those going on right now. Pretty much anything you can think of, we've got some coverage for it. So see you in the Discord. Good luck this week, and we'll see you next time.